On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes prior sales. See dealer for details. As you know, most car dealers in our area are still having trouble getting cars and charging a lot more for them. But Bennett Chevy isn't like most dealers. We kept what you love, our famous GM supplier employee prices. It's incredible. You pay what our supplier employees pay and not 1 penny more. And Bennett also gives you all the rebates. That's up to 25% off MSRP. 25% off. Plus, we've still got available 0% financing to save you even more. Shopping for pre-owned? Well, Bennett's still paying a minimum $7,000 for trades. So if any old junker is worth at least $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock, think of how much your good trade is worth. And Bennett's now an authorized lease return center for all brands. And with our non-commissioned sales staff paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, there's no pressure, no hassles. The best prices, low rates, the most for trades. Nobody beats Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
South Jersey's home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
I am the voice of the voiceless.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show. Just follow 97.3 ESPN on all the social media platforms. Sixers with a definitive win last night in Atlanta. We'll talk with Kevin McCormick from 97.3 ESPN.com coming up at 12:20 to get more into that. Also, you know me and my UFC MMA love. I was at the PFL fights actually on Thursday, with the first people allowed in the building to cover inside the PFL bubble at Ocean Resort. And then today we got UFC 263 tonight. We'll get into all of that with MMA reporter John Morgan from USA Today's MMA Junkie joins us coming up at 1:20 p.m. As always, we take your thoughts and comments. 609-403-0973 is the text board, 609-403-0973. And, of course, you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. You can comment on the stream as well. We got Rodney over here on the stream. He was commenting on the stream before we even went live today. That's how excited Rodney is about some Sixers. But that being said, we will get the Sixers today. Yes, UFC 263 is tonight. I'll give you my picks for the fights tonight. Some opportunities for you guys to make some money tonight. We'll get to that thanks to my FanDuel Sportsbook picks of the day. That'll be a little bit later in the show. Also, we'll get you caught up on some of the Eagles news of the week. And then when the Phillies lineup drops, I'll give you that as well. So we got a lot of stuff to cover today here on 97.3 ESPN. But we can't not talk about the Sixers game last night. The Sixers last night did what they absolutely had to do. They went in there and they said, we are going to take control back of this series. We don't care that it's in Atlanta. We don't care how loud or not loud the fans may be. We're just going to go out there and do our job. And that's what they did. And nobody on the Sixers had like a gaudy stat line. Nobody on the team went out there and had some crazy performance. It was just professionals doing work. And it was fun to watch professionals get the job done. And that's what they did last night. I thought it was great to see Embiid and Simmons and Harris all go out there and have impacts on the game. When you win by 16 points, you're sending a message. And by the way, that's 2 straight games they have won by 16 points. They won 118-102 in game 2, 127-111 in game 3. The Sixers are sending a message. They know the Hawks are a good basketball team. The Hawks have one of the best records in the NBA since they fired Lloyd Pierce and brought in Nate McMillan to be the interim coach. They're a good team. No doubt about it. Trae Young is a superstar in this league. But as I've told you guys before, stars are going to get their points. It's what you do with the other players on the floor that matters. So while, yeah, Trae Young had 28 points last night, it's limiting his impact on the rest of the game. Sure, John Collins had 23, but Solomon Hill had 1 point. Capilla had 8 points. Bogdanovich only hit 2 threes last night. Gallinari went 0 for 4 from 3 last night. The team's defense stepped up to the 76ers. And again, it's another game. The steals, the blocks, it adds up. You get 8 steals and 4 blocks in a game, in which Dwight Howard only plays 13 minutes, by the way. You're having an impact. You know, Tobias Harris is going out there doing work, 22 and 8. That's now 32 wins this year. The Sixers have when Tobias Harris scores at least 20 points, has at least 6 rebounds in the game. And how about Embiid with 8 assists? You could tell in that game last night that the Sixers were making a concerted effort to put Embiid in a position to facilitate. And he kind of had to, because without Danny Green on the floor, the natural floor spacing was gone. And I thought between Milton and Korkmaz, they both did a very good job at filling the Danny Green void for a game until we learned exactly what his status is. They're calling it a calf strain, which that could mean anything. You know, the calf muscle extends all the way from the knee down to the ankle. So it really depends on where the strain is in the calf that we can figure it out. But I'm going to reserve judgment until we know more information. But the fact that they're calling it a calf strain should be in and of itself a positive sign that, you know, it's not going to be overly serious. But you might have to miss a game or two. Well, it's Kevin McCormick about that coming up at 12:20 here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. Get on the conversation. Let's go 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show. Just follow 97.3 ESPN on all the social media platforms and to get in on the conversation. Another takeaway I want to take away from the game last night, and I know people don't always want to talk about the defensive side of the ball, but to me, the defensive side of the ball matters because, as I've said before, you can't name me a team that won an NBA championship or at least competed to get to an NBA Finals who couldn't play defense. It's just impossible. The NBA is about stopping your opponent from outscoring you. It's a basic principle. Executing it's a problem for a lot of people. Hawks last night shot 26% from 3. That's big. Remember, they bombed away from 3 in game 1. They were lights out in that first game. That's how they got down. The Sixers got down that big deficit. Hawks got to a huge lead, and it was basically almost over by the time the fourth quarter. If it wasn't for the Sixers having a frenetic comeback in the fourth quarter, that game wouldn't have been close at all. In that game 1, when the Hawks scored 128 points, they were shooting big from 3. 42.6%. They hit 23s in that game. In the last 2 games for the Hawks, they've hit 6 threes in last night's game. And then in game 2, they hit 11. So they've hit 17 threes over 2 games after hitting 20 in the first game. Sixers changed up the defense. Hawks are having trouble adjusting. Because, as I've told you guys before here on 97.3 ESPN, you can't stop superstars from scoring. Trae Young, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry. You don't stop these guys from scoring. You limit their impact on the outcome of the game. Because ultimately, they're going to find ways to score. They're great players for a reason. What you do is you limit their ability to impact the game and get their teammates into the game. And that's what the Sixers defense has been doing. And you saw it again last night. It's not a coincidence that the Sixers were able to go down to Atlanta and limit the Hawks' three-point shooting. Without that three-point shooting, the Hawks, they don't have a chance. Because their entire offense is built around the idea of Trae Young either scoring or penetrating the defense and passing the ball out. And when Trae Young can't dish the ball and get his guys involved on the perimeter, it's end of game. And listen, Trae Young gets some cheap assists by throwing up a few lobs here and there because he's got that float game. Doesn't mean that I'm sitting here afraid of Trae Young. Come on, don't be silly. Trae Young's a very good player. He's a great player. That dude is going to be one of the faces of the league in a few years. But you know who else is the face of the league? Joel Embiid. There's no one like him in the NBA today. And he's going out there and functioning as a stabilizing force. Sure, he doesn't go out there and score 39, 40 points again. But he had 8 assists. Between his 27 points and his 8 assists, Joel Embiid accounted himself for almost a quarter of the Sixers' points last night. About 25% of the Sixers' 127 points last night was just because of Embiid off of points and assists. That's huge. If you can get that kind of production out of Embiid more often than not, it's a big deal. Tobias Harris has turned out to be a reliable number 2 option on this team. Ben Simmons playing high-level defense. Seth Curry hitting a couple clutch shots. Kork Maz contributing. And even though Shake Milton didn't have a big game, he had to play those 21 minutes for a reason because of no Danny Green. And he did his best to play defense as well. He didn't just try to go out there and score points the whole time. He was trying on defense. Right now, the Sixers are pushing the right buttons. And the Hawks, they're having trouble responding. Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN, hanging out with you. We'll talk more Sixers with Kevin McCormick from 97.3 ESPN.com and Sports Illustrated coming up in about 8 minutes from now. Phillies are back in action today. And Billy and Bobby were talking about a couple things on the locker room earlier about this team. And when I think about the Phillies right now, I got this 2-game series with the Yankees. Hopefully that helps the attendance situation because the attendance has been, well, unexciting. I think the Phillies have a chance this weekend, though, to capitalize on a mediocre Yankees team. If I were to tell you that the New York Yankees are 33-30, some of you might be surprised. Partly because, the Phillies are 30-31. The Yankees are only a couple games above the Phillies in terms of win-loss record. And with no DH, you have no Giancarlo Stanton playing in the series against the Phillies. So you take one of their best hitters out of the lineup for the Yankees. The Yankees have already been a team that has struggled to score at times. They're third in the American League East. The Phillies are second in the National League East. Thanks to their 2 wins over the Braves, by the way. They have a real chance to make some hay in this game. They really do. I think the Phillies need to take advantage of this series with the Yankees over the weekend. Because the Yankees are not a great team. And they're beatable. And if you're serious about being contenders, this is the moment. This is the time that you have to go out there and showcase what you're capable of. Because the Yankees pitching staff, it's not great. The Yankees have only scored one more run than they've allowed this year. One more. They have a +1 run differential. The Yankees have scored 245 runs this year. The Phillies, 256. So in the year, the Phillies have scored more runs than the famous Yankees. Also, the Yankees, 14 of their 30 losses have been on the road. 19 of the Phillies' 30 wins have been at home. There's a lot in favor of the Phillies this weekend. Can they capitalize? Because if you're serious about being contenders, this is a series you need to walk away with at least one win, if not two. Preferably two, but at least one. Velasquez going later today for the Phillies, and then Nola tomorrow for the Yankees. How about this name of a blast from the past? Remember Jamison Talon? My goodness, I can't believe this guy is still in the league. Seriously, I can't believe it. I remember when he was pitching for the Pirates, and he was supposed to be this like up-and-coming phenom, and people are always talking about him and stuff. And, I mean, he's had arm problems. He can't stay healthy. He's imploded a couple times in his career. And now he landed on the Yankees because they have injuries. The dude's got a 5 ERA. I hope you win the game today. Tomorrow might be a little bit harder because Domingo Germán is one of those pitchers that don't let the record fool you. He's got electric stuff. And he's done his best pitching on the road this year, has Domingo Germán. So you got to at least win the Saturday game. Sunday game, we'll find out. Germán's got a 2 ERA on the road this year. A 4 ERA at home. So read into that what you will. All right, we'll get into the back of the Sixers coming up next year on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. As promised, Kevin McCormick is going to be back on the show coming up next. McCormick agreed to come back on the show the day after he talked to me yesterday. So we'll see if McCormick gets tired of me and decides to exit the interview halfway through. And of course, we'll get to your thoughts and comments a little bit later in the show. Of course, all of you watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, we'll bring you guys into the conversation as well. Keep the comments coming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Also, text board is open, 609-403-0973 here on 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget the 97.3 ESPN mobile app for your Phillies, Sixers, Eagles, Flyers, and high school sports coverage. 97.3 ESPN.com, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Today on Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio.
There it goes. Tatis, left field. Forget it. A massive home run to tie it at 6.
Fernando Tatis Jr. leads the San Diego Padres into Queens, New York to face the National League East leading Mets.
Deep right field on it. Gone. Lindor with the home run.
The Padres and Mets. Coverage begins today at 3:30 Eastern.
Listen to Major League Baseball on 97.3 ESPN.
Oh yeah, it's on at Matt Black Nissan.
The summertime sale is on at Matt Blatt Nissan, and the deals are heating up. Put 0 down, pay 0% interest for 60 months, or get $2,500 off MSRP on every 2021 Nissan Murano in stock. Plus, we need your trade. Buried in a current loan or lease, Matt Blatt Nissan wants to get you released so you can drive the all-new loaded SV model 2021 Nissan Rogue. Lease just $299 per month with 0 security deposit, plus our fast-track checkout. Bring any vehicle to Matt Blatt Nissan and get top dollar today in Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot, or online at mattblattnissan.com.
It's on at Matt Black Nissan.
Negative equity will be refinanced into new vehicle. Rate qualifications exist. Not all will qualify. 0% APR financing based on 1667 per thousand bar. Offers can be combined. 36 months, 10,000 miles for your lease. Lease selling price $28,590. Call 877-289-6670 or go to mattblattnissan.com for complete details. Offer ends 7/5/21. It's on at Matt Blatt Nissan on the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
PropSwap is the #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. Derek from Galloway made $800 cash just from buying and selling sports bets on PropSwap. Basketball, baseball, hockey. Just buy a future bet, hold it for a few weeks, then sell it for big profit. And if you're a buyer looking for better odds than what a sports book can offer, there's never been a better time to join PropSwap. As new users right now, get a free $100 match bonus. But hurry, the offer expires soon. Check out PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN Sports Bash Saturday. With your thoughts and comments coming up next, as we always do each and every show, Monday through Friday, game night with Josh Hennig, and then Sports Bash Saturdays at 12, following the locker room with Billy Schweim here on 97.3 ESPN. But right now, as promised, to get more into the Sixers, his observations after the Game 3 win is up right now over at 97.3 ESPN.com and on 97.3 ESPN mobile app. He is Sixers beat writer Kevin McCormick joining us right now, back on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. I was telling the audience, Kevin, I wasn't sure if you were going to come back for a second straight day, but here you are anyway. How long do you bail on me on this interview?
Never. I could never bail. Come on. We already went through a couple weeks ago about my regimen for back-to-back, so I'm built for this. It's playoff season. Gotcha.
Well, obviously the Sixers, to me, that was a definitive win last night, because to me, that was them saying, this is our series. And it doesn't matter if Danny Green had to leave with that calf strain, as they're calling it. We're going to go out here, and we're just going to put on a professional game. Nobody had a gaudy stat line. Nobody had any crazy, stats, except for Embiid with the high number of assists. I think he had 8 assists last night. But to me, I thought the Sixers went out there and had a professional win where they said, look, we're just the better team than you.
I agree. It was a very collective win, even all the way down to the second unit. When you look at, Dwight Howard had arguably his best game of the playoffs in a Sixers uniform, maybe outside of game 1 against Washington. Furkan Korkmaz comes right in after Danny Green goes down and gives you 11 points. Matisse Thybulle, I think, finished with 7 points and a handful of steals. So I agree. There was nobody that really did anything too spectacular, but the entire team collectively played well, and it looked like it could be the kill shot of this series. If you look back towards the end of the game, they were panning to the Hawks bench, and I mean, those guys looked defeated. It showed, like, in terms of their body language, that they understood the mess that they have themselves in right now, and that maybe things are going to start going very south very fast for them.
When you think about it also when it comes to the Hawks, I think that the Sixers are proving what I've said all along, which is stars are going to score. They let Bradley Beal score in the first round. They're letting Trae Young score in the second round. But they're saying, we're not going to let you elevate the other guys to beat us. Hey, you want to throw a couple of lob passes? We'll take that over three-pointers. And so far, 17 threes in games 2 and 3 combined after allowing 20 in the first game. It seems like the Sixers are saying, we're not letting you beat us there again. And the Hawks are having trouble adjusting.
Exactly, and that's all it comes down to in this superstar-driven league. The Bradley Beals, the Trae Youngs, guys of that caliber, they're going to get theirs just because of simply how magnificent they are at the sport. Like you said, the key is slowing down the Kevin Huerters, the Bogdan Bogdanoviches, the Danilo Gallinaris, because it's when the role players get hot that a game can swing. And if you go back to game 1, that was obviously the case. Although Bogdanovich did play rather well last night, I'll give him credit. He's actually played well throughout this entire series. I've been somewhat impressed from him. But when you're letting all those shooters get hot, and if you look at game 1 compared to games 2 and 3 now, it just shows the increased intensity of the Sixers defense. In game 1, they were just letting guys step into wide open threes. There was poor rotations, and it was just endless wide open shots for Atlanta, while in games 2 and 3, they're chasing a lot more. They're rotating a lot better. They're making the Hawks take contested threes. They're making them put the ball on the deck instead of just having those nice catch and shoot opportunities. So I agree. I mean, the key is with teams like this, you'll let the superstar go and get whatever theirs is, but you don't want to let them get the bench players hot and the role players in the secondary, supporting players hot, because that's when they get put in a position to where they could potentially steal a game once all those hot hands get going.
Do we read anything into the fact that the Sixers have now beaten the Hawks by a total of 16 points in each game? Game 2 at home by 16. Game 3 by 16. Do we read anything into that, or is that just kind of like how the game played out?
Read into it in terms of what? The Sixers just clearly being the better team?
Yeah, and the fact that, when you win by double digits, that's a kind of a statement. It's kind of like telling the other team, hey, we didn't just win. We won this game. It wasn't in question at the end.
I will say both wins have been in more than rather convincing fashion. It's clear they have no answer for Embiid. Tobias Harris continues to play phenomenal. Seth Curry, too, has been incredible. I can't believe, even at points in Game 3, it blows my mind that Atlanta is still letting him get wide open shots. But, I mean, when I came on with you last night, we talked about the series being 50-50, and I said that really wasn't the case, that it was more 60-40, 70-30 in favor of the Sixers. And I think that's just showing now. I mean, the Sixers are the 1 seed for a reason. I don't know why after Game 1, everyone wanted to go run into panic mode. Even the national media was trying to create that this series was, supposedly neck and neck. This is a young Atlanta team. They have little experience, and they're going up against a Sixers team who have been focused all year on hunting for a championship. Joel Embiid continues to raise his game to new heights. And I think just that experience factor and that focus and that intensity of the playoffs is starting to show now, because Atlanta threw their best punch in Game 1, and the Sixers now have come back 2 consecutive games and hit them hard, and Atlanta hasn't been able to respond. And I think that's just the doubt is starting to set in with them, and them understanding that, this team is clearly superior and they're not going to give an inch.
Kevin McCormick joining us here on Sports Bash Saturday here on 97.3 ESPN at Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter. Check out his observations after the Sixers win right now on 97.3 ESPN.com. And Kevin, one of your observations was about Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons, his assists plus points output accounted for 34 points. And so it's 34 of the Sixers' points last night were just from Ben Simmons alone. It seems like as the playoffs have progressed, either people want to focus a lot on his scoring, the fact that he's stopping points on the other end, and he's facilitating points on the offensive end. It seems like he has really found his kind of his niche at this point.
Absolutely. It's always been his niche, but people just haven't been able to accept it. I don't understand how after Game 2 people were all up in arms about Ben Simmons only attempting 3 shots when Joel Embiid was going for 40 points and Seth Curry was barely even hitting the net on all his jump shots. What's so great about a superstar like Ben Simmons is he is more than okay with stepping back when other guys are the hot hand, whether it's Seth Curry, whether it's Joel Embiid, whether it's Tobias Harris. He doesn't really care. He's not a guy that needs to go out there and get his. All that really matters to him is winning in the end, and he understands that his ability to impact winning is with his elite level defense, with his elite level facilitation. But credit to him. I don't know what was said to him at halftime. Some of the guys gave a little bit of insight of what was talked about with Ben Simmons at the halftime of Game 3, but it worked. He completely went into attack mode in the second half, attacking mismatches, using him in the post, just getting downhill. But yeah, I mean, his niche is being that Swiss Army knife guy, and then when the moment arises, he's been able to take advantage of it. I think the second half of Game 3 draws a lot of resemblance to Game 2 against Washington, where Joel Embiid realized that the Wizards were not going to leave his side. They were pretty much going to throw the kitchen sink at him all game, and Embiid said, all right, that's fine. Come follow me out to the perimeter, and completely opened up the lane for Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris to attack, and Ben took complete advantage of it. So I think it's just more Ben is very good at picking his spots, and the Sixers are they're tough to compete with. I mean, it's simple as that.
Yeah, and I'm not one of the people who likes to throw around words like generational talent or transcendent, with almost anybody. Not because I'm anti-Ben Simmons, but because I just don't I feel like the term is overused at this point. But here's my thing, and I'm going to draw you into this conversation. Mike Gill had this conversation a little bit earlier this week. I feel like the number 1 overall pick narrative is such an overrated thing. Because you go through the number 1 overall picks over the last 20-plus years, outside of LeBron and Dwight Howard, there's no number 1 overall pick that elevated their team to be an NBA Finals contender. You have all these busts like Kwame Brown, guys like Greg Oden couldn't stay healthy. Anthony Davis couldn't barely get out of the first round with the Pelicans. He had to go join LeBron to actually go anywhere. There's a lot of these number 1 overall picks. They're talented players if they stay healthy. But Kevin, they're really not that good. So realistically, Ben Simmons is actually on par with the number 1 overall pick narrative, which is as long as you're better than Greg Oden, Markelle Fultz, and Kwame Brown, it's a successful pick at this point.
And it's not like he doesn't contribute to winning. Like at the end of the day, if the Sixers do end up winning a championship with, Joel Embiid leading the charge on the offensive end and Ben Simmons being the guy who's just locking up the opposing team's best player and is setting the table for everyone, if that gets you a title, I would say that's a successful number 1 pick. We are talking multi-time All-Star, All-NBA caliber player, is always near the top of the league in assists, is now regarded as the most versatile defender in the NBA, should have been the Defensive Player of the Year this year, will likely win the award multiple times before he hangs it up. So, that's a successful resume for a number 1 pick. I think it's just people are so caught up in the offensive highlight, culture of today's game that a guy like Ben Simmons is so against the grain that you think of just because how different he is, that translates to him being bad. But there's more than one way to impact winning basketball outside of scoring and pulling up from the logo.
Yeah, let's do a bit of a futile exercise, but an opportunity to educate people out there listening. Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN, joined by Kevin McCormick. You can see him live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We're also live on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. So I'm going to go back 22 years, okay, Kevin? And that way we can kind of give the audience an idea of what we're talking about. So, because before 22 years ago, basketball evaluation was different, okay? Basketball evaluation in the modern era or the Jordan era, okay? All the guys who grew up watching Magic and Bird and Jordan, it's a different world. So here's your number 1 overall picks. Michael Olowokandi. He's a bust, right? We all agree on that.
Never even heard of him, to be honest.
Oh, my God. When you get a chance, go back and look at the 98 draft. That was the year the Sixers took Larry Hughes over Paul Pierce, okay?
Okay.
All right. Elton Brand was drafted next year. Solid all-star, but was never some transcendent, franchise-changing player.
Phenomenal executive.
Right. Kenyon Martin was drafted next year. Great highlight film, real great blocks, but he was like the 3rd option on the Nets team that got to the NBA Finals.
Yeah, he's kind of like in that Ben Simmons category of just a physical guy who wasn't really like you said, the top of offensive go-to guys, but was still a solid piece on some good teams.
Kwame Brown was a bust. We all agree on that. Yao Ming, when he was healthy, was an impactful player, but the Rockets never got to an NBA Finals with him. They didn't really do much with him, and he was injured more often than not at one point, and it pretty much derailed his career with all the foot injuries.
Yeah, it's hard to really put a marker on that just because, like you said, the injuries are what really derailed him. When he was healthy, he was a dominant player. If he stays healthy, I think he more than lives up to that number 1 pick stature.
And it's ironic because if you look at his stats during his career, for as big and as impactful as he was when he was healthy, Embiid actually still has some better stats than him in terms of some of the rebounding and the offensive metrics. The only thing that Yao was better at than Embiid was he had probably like a higher block volume. That's because Yao was like 7'8", so that kind of helps a little bit. LeBron James, we know who he is. Dwight Howard led the Magic to an NBA final, so we got to give him that.
I agree. And still phenomenal backup center.
Absolutely. Andrew Bogut, bust. Andre Bargnani, that was a Brian Colangelo pick up there in Toronto. He was a bust. Greg Oden, a billion injuries. He never worked out. By the way, the guy drafted number 2 in that year was Kevin Durant. Yeah, so actually, the number 2 pick ended up being 100 times better than number 1 overall pick.
I still can't believe, even in the moment, it still blows my mind that Kevin Durant wasn't taking it like the first pick. I don't know what Portland saw in Odin that they loved it so much.
I'll tell you what they saw. They saw that they thought Kevin Durant was too skinny. That was the whole conversation. I remember that whole draft. The whole ramp up was Durant's too skinny. Can he stay healthy? You're choosing between the guy who's been injured and the guy who could get injured. So you're picking the evil that all that kind of stuff, and end up blowing up Portland's face again.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they could have had 6'11" guy who can play like a guard and shoot over just about anybody in the league.
I mean, can you imagine a team that at that time would have Kevin Durant and Brandon Roy, or later would have been Kevin Durant and Damian Lillard? I mean, good grief.
Yeah, it would have been scary. Brandon Roy, if he stayed healthy and you put him with Kevin Durant, Brandon Roy was one of my favorite players when I was first growing up in my NBA fandom, and it still breaks my heart that injuries derailed his career. But if you put him and Kevin Durant together, when they're healthy, that would have been a scary, scary offense.
Absolutely. Who else we got here? Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin is a nice player. All-star, good player, but he wasn't a franchise-changing player. The Clippers didn't do anything until Chris Paul got there.
Not to mention Steph Curry and James Harden went picks later.
That's true as well. Derrick Rose won the league MVP. He was a great player until he got injured. The injuries would derailed him, but for that short window of a few years, he turned that Bulls team into a perennial contender.
Yeah, if he doesn't go down, he most certainly lives up to that stature. You can't forget, he took that Miami Heat team to 7. Like, he took them the distance, putting Chicago pretty much just on his shoulders. Like you said, youngest league MVP in history, was on his way to paving, the next phase of the point guard position. So if he doesn't get hurt, he definitely lives up to that number 1 pick stature.
John Wall is a good player, all-star, but he was never able to elevate the Wizards beyond a certain point, and then the injuries caught up to him. So it's kind of a similar narrative, but like a lesser version than Rose. Kyrie Irving never won without LeBron James. We're still waiting for him to win without LeBron James. He was on the Cavs, and they were a lottery team.
Yeah, but he's still a phenomenal player. That's a transcendent talent that you take at number 1, though.
But again, I'm not saying he's a bad player. I'm just saying that he's not a game changer. Like, you take LeBron James, Kevin Durant, you put them on any team in the league, they're a contender. You don't do that with Kyrie Irving. You don't do that with John Wall, Blake Griffin, and these other guys.
I agree. Part of it also goes down to, the talent that's around them too. Some of these guys, although they were great players, their situation around them never essentially improved.
Like LeBron James at 23 years old, drug the band of misfit toys Cavs to the NBA Finals. They lost to the Spurs. Like, that's what I'm talking about here. Like, people want the number 1 overall pick. The number 1 overall pick every year is LeBron James. But more often than not, you're getting John Wall and Kyrie Irving. You're not getting LeBron James.
I mean, it's tough to compare anyone to LeBron James. The dude's going to go down as arguably the first or second best player ever.
Well, on my list, he's third. But that's a different conversation. Anthony Davis, talked about him. We all agree Anthony Bennett was a bust, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If anyone gets a chance, check out Bobby Marks' story about the Anthony Bennett 2013 draft, because he was working for the Nets at the time. His story about the number 1 overall pick that year is absolutely mind-blowing about why it became Anthony Bennett. It's an amazing story. I can't do it justice to explain it here, but if you get a chance, look up the story by Bobby Marks. Andrew Wiggins, the pick next year, good player, maybe all-star caliber, but same draft with Joel Embiid. Karl Anthony Towns, all-star, good player, not changing the franchise. Then you get Ben Simmons. So realistically, in the last 22 years, and all the years for Ben Simmons, there were 3 guys who changed their franchise. Everyone else was either a bust, injury-prone, or just a solid, good all-star.
Yeah, I mean, what are you going to do? Some of them, like I said, I think situation definitely plays a part in that. But I agree with you. There's very few number 1 overall. There's very few high picks in general that come in and just completely transcend a franchise, just because there's very few players in history who have had the all-around capability to do that. So, I mean, part of what helps these high picks elevate their game and reach that contender status is, how is the team able to respond after that once they get that talent in-house?
Yeah, and listen, I understand there's a contingent of people out there who are all feeding into the Kwame Brown vomit that he's been putting out there. We got one comment on here, still calling people a bust, hashtag mom is cooking. Look, I get it. The Kwame Brown truthers are buying into the Kwame Brown vomit, but go back and watch Kwame Brown. You'll actually know for yourself who and what Kwame Brown was. He should have never entered the draft. He should have gone to college. They drafted him out of high school. They were convinced he could be something that he wasn't. And guess what? He is a bust. I'm not going to back off of that.
Still a legend on Instagram.
There's a lot of people who are legends on Instagram, okay? There are people who are literally only famous because of Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. If it wasn't for those 3 platforms, nobody knows who half these people are. So I don't give them credit for that, okay? If I wanted to be crazy and had about 20 hours of my day to do a lot of nothing, I could be famous in social media too. But actually, I work a real job.
What are you going to do?
Kevin's just baffled at this point. Kevin McCormick.
I didn't expect to come on and spend this much time talking about Kwame Brown.
I didn't either, but the Ben Simmons people made me do it. So it's like when the people say the devil made me do it, the Ben Simmons haters made me do it. There you go. Kevin McCormick at Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter. Before I let you go, Game 4 is on Monday night. The Bucks Nets are tomorrow afternoon. Which series ends first?
Sixers Hawks.
So you have the Sixers Hawks ending in 5.
I think it could. I don't know if it's more. I think the Sixers are going to win in 5. I still have this little bit of faith that Milwaukee is going to pull something out and extend the series, and the series is eventually going to live up to the hype.
Okay. All right. Well, so far it's only been 1 game for each team that's been impressive, really. And then
is the Bucks win even impressive?
You're right.
No, that game was horrid. That game was horrid.
It was bad. I'll give you that. I mean, yeah, it was ugly. First of all, how do you win and lose a game in back-to-back games and score almost the exact same points? Like that in and of itself is like mind-boggling. The Bucks literally won 1 game after losing the game before and scored like almost the exact same number of points.
I'm still just asking myself, who does Bruce Brown think he is that he's taking final shots over Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving when they're both just standing next to him? Like, how are they not ready to just rip this man alive in the huddle after the game? Like,
because they need him. He's the only guy healthy.
Yeah. Next, they'll be relying on TLC.
Well, they're already relying on Mike James. I mean, Mike James is putting in yeoman's work for a couple games there.
True, but I mean, I guess it's easy to do all that when you have all that just stacked star talent. But go Milwaukee! Need them to tear each other apart.
At Kevin MCC NBA on Twitter for all his Sixers and NBA coverage, his observations after the Sixers game win last night over at 97.3 ESPN.com. And his old guest, Kevin, appeared on the Boardwalk on the Hotline in virtual living color on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter with the classic Adidas hat. I'm liking that hat, man. I told you that earlier.
Thanks.
Kevin, have a good one, man. Take care of yourself.
Thanks, man. You too.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. All right, we got a bunch of comments to get to. Text board 609-403-0973. And everybody watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I see you guys commenting over there. I'll get to you guys in just a bit. We got somebody watching over there from Australia with a very strong pull on the icon there. Michael Jackson, the popcorn. That's a strong pull by Evans Clan over there watching on YouTube. Strong move. Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday. We'll get in the UFC 263 as well. Less than an hour from now, John Morgan covers MMA for USA Today. MMA Junkie, been doing it for a long time. He'll join us coming up as well to get into the fights. 2 title fights tonight and actually 3 5-round fights because the third fight has Nate Diaz making his return versus Leon Edwards, and that is going to be a 5-round fight as well. So a lot to get into with the UFC fights. But next, your thoughts and comments right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
It's Sixers playoff basketball
Monday night
on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McInnes, calling all the exciting Sixers playoff action.
B got the rebound, and he puts it in, and he's fouled by Capella.
It's Sixers Hawks Game 4
Monday night. Coverage begins at 7:30.
Philadelphia 76ers playoff basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes prior sales. See dealer for details. As you know, most car dealers in our area are still having trouble getting cars and charging a lot more for them. But Bennett Chevy isn't like most dealers. We kept what you love, our famous GM supplier employee prices. It's incredible. You pay what our supplier employees pay and not 1 penny more. And Bennett also gives you all the rebates. That's up to 25% off MSRP. 25% off. Plus, we've still got available 0% financing to save you even more. Shopping for pre-owned? Well, Bennett's still paying a minimum $7,000 for trades. So if any old junker is worth at least $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock, think of how much your good trade is worth. And Bennett's now an authorized lease return center for all brands. And with our non-commissioned sales staff paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, there's no pressure, no hassles. The best prices, low rates, the most for trades. Nobody beats Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Are wasps, ants, or carpenter bees bugging you? Viking Pest Control can protect your home or business this summer. For a limited time, new customers save $50 on any service. Get a fast, free quote at VikingPest.com.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Get on the conversation here on 97.3 ESPN. As promised, get you guys' thoughts and comments here at 609-403-0973, and all of you watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter over on the text board. We talked about the Sixers just now, so we'll get to the Sixers comment first. Dan from EHT. Actually, the Phillies stuff, we'll get to that real quick because I know the texters want to talk about that. Angel from Vineland says, the Phillies just need to trade a player to stock up on young players. Seriously, it's Angel from Vineland. The problem with that, Angel, is then you're trading Bryce Harper and JT Realmuto. You don't re-sign Harper and Realmuto and then hire Dave Dombrowski just to trade players to stock up on young guys. That's not what the Phillies need. The Phillies need to make tough decisions about some of their young guys. They need to make a decision if Aaron Nola, Rhys Hoskins, Alec Boehm, are these guys part of your future? Are these guys going to be part of the team that wins the championship? Look at the Phillies before 2008. They had to make a decision. They said, listen, we're going to take Ryan Howard over Jim Thome. We're not going to keep Aaron Rowan. We're going to go with Shane Victorino in center field. They had to make tough decisions along the way. They didn't re-sign Pat Burrell. They signed Raul Ibanez. They are going to have to make tough decisions here. And I think that's how the Phillies make the changes they need. And maybe, look, I'm not advocating for it, but there's not a lot of value on this organization right now. So unless you're willing to trade a guy like Bryson Stott, who's in the minor leagues, you might have to move a guy like Nola or Rhys Hoskins to really overhaul this roster for long-term success. That's text over at 609-403-0973, 609-403-0973. Rodney has a couple comments. One about the Sixers. He says, Ben Simmons' aggression in the third quarter last night was fun to watch since Embiid was getting triple teamed. But Embiid had also a bunch of assists too. Embiid and Simmons both had a great game last night. So I think that, again, we overlook the fact that this sport's a two-way sport. And Embiid and Simmons are both guys who play defense as well as play offense. So it's not just one or the other. It's a two-way thing. So for me, I think we got to give Embiid and Simmons credit for the success they had last night in helping that team win that game. Again, they win by 16 points, 2 straight games. I just don't think that's a coincidence. Rodney also says about the Phillies situation, says if the Mets lose the Padres over the next 2 games and the Phillies get some wins, the narrative around them should change a little bit with the standings. Yeah, man, it's not like the Phillies are like out of it right now. The Phillies right now are 4 games behind the Mets. They just beat the Braves 2 games. That helps them in the standings. The Nats are actually in last place right now. With Scherzer going down with what they're calling a groin issue, who knows if the Nats are going to be competitive the rest of the season? Because without him in Strasburg, they're nothing. So it comes down to the Mets. And the Mets and the Phillies are both very good at home and horrible on the road. The Phillies have scored more runs than the Mets this year, but the Mets have a better pitching staff, and they've allowed way less runs. So while the Phillies have scored about 44 more runs this year, the Mets pitching staff is allowing about 770 less runs on the season. So you're right. It's not a foregone conclusion the Mets are going to win the division. My question is, with the Mets and the Phillies, what happens first? Who makes a trade first? Who gets their team rolling first? Because the Phillies season, they have a lot of win streaks. They're just kind of like staying right above 500, kind of just hanging right around there. They're doing just enough. So for me, like with the Phillies, I've always questioned about what to do with them at times, because I watch that team and you get excited about the walk-off wins, but then they have these losses that just drive you nuts. And then, Odubel Herrera doesn't play great in center field. You need to replace him in center field at some point. I don't love the pitching staff right now, for sure. They're serviceable, but Eflin has had a couple down games. Are we really sure Spencer Howard's a long-term solution? Velasquez, you're still waiting on him to implode, even though he's pitched very good in recent weeks. So a lot of questions with the Phillies moving forward. I just can't believe Velasquez right now has pitched the way he has this year. I just keep waiting for him to have a stretch of games where he just embarrasses you, and he hasn't. And the strikeouts are up again, which is a good thing for him. If he's getting strikeouts, he's getting more than a strikeout per inning. That's a good sign for his pitching. But can you really rely on Vince Velasquez long term to help you win games? The last 2 games, he's gone no more than 3 and 4 innings. For a while there, he was going 5 and 6 innings almost every single start. Now, last 2 starts, he hasn't gone the distance. What do we do? Find out tonight versus the Yankees. Actually, today, the Phillies play a late afternoon game. Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday. More to come, more Sixers, more Eagles talk, UFC 263 and more coming on next on 97.3 ESPN.
The NBA playoffs continue.
Gets the foul and scores. Donovan Mitchell takes it to the rack.
The top-seeded Utah Jazz continue to roll, winning games 1 and 2 against the Clippers. Now the series shifts to Los Angeles. Can Kawhi and the Clippers get the critical Game 3 win, or will the Jazz move within 1 game of the conference finals? Game 3 of the Clippers and Jazz. Coverage begins today at 8 Eastern.
The NBA playoffs, exclusively on 97.3 ESPN FM, South Jersey's sports leader.
South Jersey's home for the Sixers and Flyers.
Yeah! He scores! A two-hand jam!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Now, Sports Bash Saturday. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here, Sports Bash Saturday, second hour here on 97.3 ESPN FM. 973 ESPN mobile app, and we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show. Just follow 973 ESPN every Monday through Friday. Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Game Night with Josh Hennig, The Locker Room with Billy Schweim over on Twitter and Facebook as well. All the live shows, you can watch them as well as listen to them on 973 ESPN FM, the 973 ESPN mobile app. Coming up in less than 20 minutes from now, John Morgan, MMA reporter for USA Today's MMA Junkie, will join us coming up to preview UFC 263. I got my UFC picks for later in the show, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Use promo code Hennig when you sign up for your first bet risk-free up to $1,000. That's promo code Hennig when you sign up with FanDuel Sportsbook. So, talk a lot of Sixers. Sixers, big win last night. I'll talk some Phillies as well in the first hour as the Phillies start to resume their series today versus New York Yankees later this afternoon. 2-game set before they hit the road, take on the Dodgers. Sixers, another big game for them. They won by 16 points, 2 straight games now. 1 at home, 1 on the road. To me, it was a definitive statement by the 76ers. And we'll get to your thoughts and comments as well throughout the show. 609-403-0973. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, and comment on the stream as well. I did want to hit on for a moment, though, on the Eagles, because this week, I think we learned something about the Philadelphia Eagles. And it started when they cut the quarterback, undrafted free agent, Jamie Newman. And the reason why I say it started with that was because you learned something about the Eagles that moment. You know, in the past, typically if you sign an undrafted free agent, you at least bring him to camp and give him a chance to figure it out, right? You give it a chance to see at least if he can be a camp arm and kind of fill a void and, you know, play some quarters of games and kind of get it all figured out. But as of right now, the Philadelphia Eagles said, no, we don't care. We're out of here. We just don't care. And I think that is a huge thing to keep an eye on. You have an Eagles team that literally got rid of their number 3 quarterback before training camp even began. That in and of itself is absolutely unheard of. Think about it. You are going in the training camp as of right now with just only Jalen Hurts, Joe Flacco. Teams usually have 4 or 5 quarterbacks they go in with. But not this time. Not today. Not in this situation. No. Apparently, Sirianni and Shane Steichen and Brian Johnson, the quarterback coach, were so unhappy with Jamie Newman, they were like, we're bailing now. We're out of here. And that's a huge deal. That tells you where the Eagles' mindset is. Sirianni and his coaches, they're not here to, play favorites. They're not here to make a bunch of friends. They're not here to be a bunch of players' coaches. They are here to win football games and build a better football team. Develop players. Advance. Progress. Whatever you want to use, whatever verbiage, whatever adjective you want to use, guess what? They're not putting up with no mess. Jamie Newman out. They were not happy with him. Now they got to find another quarterback now. And I think that the fact that they are so willing to cut somebody tells me that this team is not going to placate anybody. They're not going to keep anybody around just for having them around. They're not playing favorites. Jason Peters ain't walking through that door again. None of that garbage. And I love it. I love the fact that the Eagles are done being complacent. I was getting so tired of this organization just retreading dudes and bringing them back because, well, we got to bring them back. No, go find talent. Go build this team. Be better. it's so exasperating watching that roster develop sometimes. And now you have a coaching staff. They're not even letting the guy get the camp. They're just like, you know what? We're disinterested. We're out on this guy. I think that's huge. So I think that is something to keep an eye on. That this Eagles coaching staff, they're just not settling. They're not just okay with having some random dude in camp. Now, this week, Adam Kaplan on Football at 4 mentioned a couple of guys to keep an eye on for the Eagles to bring in the camp, to at least have camp arms. I don't know if they're going to compete for a job on the roster, but you got to at least have some bodies in camp. Here's what Adam Kaplan said earlier this week on the Sports Bash.
Could be the guys to keep an eye on. They all fit the West Coast offense. They're guys who've played in it because the Eagles will run a version of a West Coast offense. Sean Mannion, who was drafted by the Rams and Sean McVay coached him. That's one guy. Nick Mullins, who played against the Eagles last year when the Eagles went into Santa Clara and beat the Niners, who played in West Coast offense. So those are two guys to keep an eye on.
So Nick Mullins and Sean Mannion. And again, these are not guys who are going to compete for the starting job or anything goofy like that. But guess what? I think it's fair to say that the Eagles, they're not messing around. They're not playing around anymore. You know, you have an organization that went for so many years just making strange decisions during the Chip Kelly and Doug Peterson eras, just allowing weird stuff to happen. Not anymore. They're done. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to win the division. It doesn't mean they're going to win a Super Bowl in 2 years. Like with Doug Peterson, when he took over, he won the Super Bowl in the second year. But what it does say is this is an organization that they're not settling. They're not content. They're not going to be complacent. I think that's a big deal. Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN Sports Bash Saturday. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can comment on the show as well. Now, in terms of the other move that happened this week, they brought back Richard Rodgers. Now, that's no guarantee that Zach Ertz is being traded or Zach Ertz won't be here moving forward. But what it is a guarantee of is the fact that this is a team that is serious about having depth. They don't want to go into this year hoping and praying that some of these guys work out or some of these guys are going to be good enough. No, they're going in saying, hey, man, we need more than what we had last year. I think Nick Sirianni's watched the film and said, yeah, we got to make sure we have enough veteran depth to make sure that if someone does go down, someone does get injured, we're not just rolling out there a Keem Butler or Jason Kroom, for goodness sake. Richard Rodgers is reliable. He has 15 career touchdowns. He knows how to play the tight end position. He knows how to block. He's good. He's serviceable. He gets the job done. That's why I think the Eagles are telling you they need depth. They need people to come in there and get the job done. And I think it's something to keep an eye on moving forward because let's be realistic. The Philadelphia Eagles, they had a lot of holes last year. And part of it was because the roster wasn't built properly. I feel like they're trying to change that this time around. We got a text that came in over at 609-403-0973. Of course, we're talking about a lot of things today. Sixers, Phillies, Eagles. Angel from Vineland chimes in on the text board with his predictions. I mean, I wasn't really going this direction, but Angel threw it at me, and I'm going to just take a problem with it. He says, my prediction for the NFC East this year, number 1, Giants, number 2, Washington football team, number 3, Cowboys, number 4, Eagles. First of all, Angel, you must be a Giants fan because nobody in their right mind is picking the Giants to win the division. They arguably have, if not the worst quarterback, the quarterback with the most questions around him in the division. Daniel Jones has all the talent in the world, but so far he has proven to be an inconsistent quarterback who has trouble reading defenses, who only has success when he runs the football. I still have a ton of questions about their offensive line. I still have a ton of questions about, honestly, a lot of things with this team. That Giants defense, I need to see them step up. The offensive line, I need to see them step up. Until I see those two things happen, I don't care that you have 200 wide receivers. I just don't believe in Daniel Jones. To me, I feel like the division is going to be won by either Washington or Dallas. Because if Dak Prescott can play at the same level he did last year, those handful of games because he got injured, or he plays even better, they can definitely win the division. Cowboys still have questions on the defensive side of the ball. We've been drafting a lot of guys on defense. Now it's time for those defensive players drafted to pan out, to earn their draft slots, to earn the investment the Cowboys put in them. Offensively, the Cowboys can score with anybody. Defense, we'll have to wait and see. Now, when it comes to Washington, I think Washington's defense is still a bunch of studs, even without Ryan Kerrigan down there. I mean, they got Sweat, they got Chase Young, Jonathan Allen. They got a ton of dudes. Matt Ioannidis. I mean, they got depth on that defensive line. They got some nice linebackers. Secondary is solid, not great. Quarterback situation is a little bit of a question. I get that. Ryan Fitzpatrick, can he play a full 16, 17 games and be what we've seen from him in short spurts? Or is he going to revert back to old form? We'll have to wait and find out. Also, the backup quarterback is Taylor Heineke. Not exactly impressed. Your big free agent offensive signing was Curtis Samuel. You kind of already had a Curtis Samuel with Antonio Gibson. So unless you're playing more gadget plays or you're turning him into a slot weapon, or I don't know. I think you putting the Eagles in last place either means you're just a fan of one of the other three teams, Angel, or you just hate the Eagles. I think the team that ends up in last place is the Giants this year. I think the Eagles win 7 or 8 games. I don't know if they win the division, but I think they're better than people give them credit for. 609-403-0973 is text board. Texture Chimes is Nick Mullins can win you football games. Nick Mullins is a serviceable quarterback, but there's a reason why the 49ers haven't brought him back. If Kyle Shanahan doesn't want you anymore, what does that mean? Now, I understand part of it is because they already have Jimmy Garoppolo and Trey Lance, but he's basically picking C.J. Beathard as his third quarterback over Nick Mullins. So, was Nick Mullins winning games because he had Kyle Shanahan or because he himself is a solid, good quarterback? Remember Bobby Hoying? As soon as John Gruden wasn't in his ear anymore, he couldn't do anything. Some quarterbacks need the coach to put them in a position to be successful. And there's part of me that wonders, is that Nick Mullins? Was he successful because he had Kyle Shanahan? Just a thought. Now, if you want to bring him in to be a camp arm and play some preseason games, I'm cool with that. But I don't know if he's competing with Joe Flacco for the backup job. Let's get one more text in here. A little bit earlier, Dan in EHT texted us 609-403-0973. I brought this up to Billy Schweim and the guys in the locker room off the air, but I wanted to bring it up on the air as well. Because he said, the Phillies took Mickey Moniak over Ian Anderson that draft year, but that's not as bad as Sixers taking Fultz over Tatum, but still makes you think. Listen, the drafting of Moniak, I think, is going to haunt this team forever. I think the fact that you look at the list of guys who were all drafted after Moniak, it's disgusting. Ian Anderson would look really nice in the Phillies rotation right now. Really nice. I know AJ Puck hasn't really turned out, but I mean, I think he's certainly living better than what we have now. Solid bullpen pitcher. Could have had that. You know who also drafted that draft? Kyle Lewis. He's a very good outfielder. He'd be your center fielder right now. Evadubo Herrera. Look pretty good. You know what's taken out in that draft? A couple other guys that are of interest to some people. How about Will Smith? Got some pop in his bat. Bang a little. He was drafted in the first round. Taylor Trammell, nice prospect. Got some pop. Not great start to his career, but he's a good prospect. He's considered a better prospect than Mickey Moniak is. So the Phillies could have had a few different guys. They passed all of them. Why? Because Mickey Moniak. Honestly, I don't know why they picked Moniak over those other guys. I feel like it was one of those deals where they talked themselves into a bad situation. All right. Coming up next, we'll preview UFC 263 with John Morgan from USA Today MMA Junkie reporter right here on Sports Bash Saturday. UFC 263 tonight, 2 title fights on the line, and Nate Diaz makes his UFC return. We'll preview it next here on 97.3 ESPN FM and 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
It's Sixers playoff basketball Monday night on 97.3 ESPN with the voice of the 76ers, Tom McInnes, calling all the exciting Sixers playoff action.
B got the rebound, and he puts it in, and he was fouled by Capella.
It's Sixers Hawks Game 4 Monday night. Coverage begins at 7:30. Philadelphia 76ers playoff basketball on your radio home of the Sixers in South Jersey, 97.3 ESPN.
You've got tough picks to make this summer. Watch a movie or take a bike ride. Stay home or head to the beach. No matter your plans, the easiest pick is the Piccadilly Inn on Route 206 in Shamong. Home to South Jersey's best wings, they're the perfect pick for dinner. Check out the Piccadilly on Facebook for daily specials and live entertainment. Then call ahead and place your order for their famous wings, ears, and tails. Or join them on the Pick Patio for outdoor dining.
The Piccadilly Inn.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig here on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We are going to get into UFC 263 tonight. Not one, but two title fights, and also a third 5-round fight tonight. You can catch all the action on ESPN Plus pay-per-view. Joining us right now on the World Cup Hotline to preview the fights, it is the one and only John Morgan, USA Today MMA Junkie lead MMA reporter. John, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. It's fight day, and it's a big fight day, so we're getting excited for it.
Absolutely, and there's legit tension with these two title fights too. These guys, they're not friends. They don't like each other, and watching all the build up. And it felt like it just hit a boiling point for you guys over there in Arizona because, listening to Figueiredo and Moreno talk about each other and, Dana White literally telling Adesanya and Vettori, don't touch each other at the look-in. Like, it was to a point where, even Dana was like, I am going to get in and out of this as fast as possible because I don't want to get in between these guys.
Yeah, no question about it. It just adds to the excitement, right? I mean, a good MMA fight, you don't have to have tension, but when you do, when there's some bad blood, it makes it even a little bit more interesting. And both of these are rematches. So, I mean, this is not some kind of made-up tension between the two. Israel Adesanya and Marvin Vettori, they faced off 3 years ago, interestingly enough, in the exact same arena. And it was a split decision, but it was a fight that Israel Adesanya felt that he won comfortably. It was before he was champion, but it was on his rise to the top. Meanwhile, Marvin Vettori thought that he kind of got robbed in the fight. He thought that he should have been awarded the decision, and he called for the rematch and has been calling for the rematch all along the way. Now, as Israel Adesanya was continuing his rise up to the top, he was like, I'm not interested. No, I don't care. I beat that guy. I'm moving on to bigger and better things. So Marvin Vettori just kept winning, 5 in a row, and now he's back here in the title fight. He wants to be Italy's first ever UFC champion. So some legit bad blood between the two, and of course some history. And as you said, it's the same with Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno as well. They fought with the title on the line before. There was a point deduction. Because of the point deduction, it ended up being a draw. Had there not been a deduction for a low blow, Deiveson Figueiredo would have won the title. But he was pushed to the limit by Brandon Moreno. Deiveson feels like Brandon Moreno kind of faked it a little bit when he got hit in the groin. I don't know. I was there. I thought the man was going to dry heave if he was acting. He's a dang good actor. But there's been some words back and forth. Brandon Moreno's about the nicest guy you'll ever meet. But even he's saying, look, I'm going to knock this guy out. I'm going to finish him. And by the way, I got to say, the reception that Brandon Moreno has been receiving here in Arizona has been unbelievable. Obviously, he's born and raised in Mexico. You got a huge Mexican-American population here in Phoenix. And, man, he has been absolutely, treated as a hero. So the energy in the building is going to be unbelievable.
Let's dig a little deeper into the top one before we get into the co-main. Adesanya, Vettori, a lot of people are asserting, hey, Adesanya maybe got a little exposed when he moved up and lost to Jan. But that was a bigger man. That was a bigger weight class. Whereas Vettori, he's seen what he brings to the table. Where do you lean? Do you lean in the category of, hey, Vettori's seen him before, he knows how to deal with him? Or do you lean to, hey, Adesanya, outside of the Jan Blachowicz fight, his takedown defense has gotten a lot better?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both, but I lean heavier towards Israel Adesanya. I mean, you're absolutely right. Marvin Vettori would be silly not to take a look at what worked in that blueprint and say, hey, I can implement some of that. And truth be told, a lot of that is his game. Now, you're right. He's not the bigger man like Jan Blachowicz, that fight at 205 pounds. He doesn't have that kind of size advantage, but he does have maybe even better wrestling, maybe even better grappling. And I think he's definitely going to want to try to implement that here. But Israel Adesanya, he has shown improved takedown defense. He has shown, better grappling that I think he's given credit for. And there was just something off. I don't know what it was. And Israel Adesanya won't make any excuses. But that Jan Blachowicz fight week, he was just flat all week. The energy that we're used to, it just didn't seem to be there. And he does seem to have that here. Marvin Vettori obviously riles him up, gets him excited. I think Israel Adesanya is, frustrated at the loss and wants to come back and rebound and find fashion. He said, listen, that champ, goal didn't work for me, but now I'm going to go back to 185 and show the world that I'm the greatest middleweight in the world. So I love Marvin Vettori's rise. I think he's a fun character because he's just an absolute hothead that gets mad at everything and he makes it fun. But I think I lean towards Adesanya being on point tonight and retaining his title.
Yeah, we know a lot of times when guys rematch, usually the guy who becomes champion, he does have an advantage. And I just have to think, John, that, Adesanya, like you said, he has something to prove in this fight. He wants to go out there and say, hey, this is my division. You can't step up to me and not get hurt. And I think Israel has proven time and time again, whether it was Paulo Costa, whether it was Robert Whittaker, that he looked at these guys and says, I'm not afraid of these guys who have all these big, strong muscles. Yoel Romero, Gastelum. He looks at these guys and says, I just don't care. Like, I can beat you. And I think there's such an edge that you need to be a champion. I think he's got that edge right now.
Yeah, I completely agree. He's, like I said, he seems to be dialed in this week. The focus seems to be there. And I think it is a little bit different. Before, when you're trying to take somebody else's belt, your belt's not on the line. You're not necessarily having to worry about giving something up. You're just in this position of, okay, wow, where can I go? Now he's defending his belt. Now he's trying to prove to the world and, that he can retain, that he is that guy that we all thought he was before the loss, the undefeated, difficult riddle to figure out. So listen, Marvin Vettori to me is a live underdog. I think there's a possibility for him to get things done here. But and as I said, if you take from the blueprint of Jan Blachowicz, which you absolutely should, you're going to see some paths to victory. Now that Adesanya is not undefeated anymore, you have that, you see that possibility, you see that path to victory. But Adesanya just seems too dialed in, and if he's doing that, man, he is a master of space. He is a master of movement. This is going to be the bigger cage that the UFC uses, so he's going to have more room to work with, and all those things just seem to bode well for Israel Adesanya.
John Morgan joining us here on the Boardwalk kind of hotline here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN at MMA Junkie. John on Twitter. Check out all of his coverage over at MMA Junkie with USA Today. UFC 263 is tonight, the co-main event, as we mentioned. Davison and Figueiredo running it back with Brandon Moreno. For those who may not remember, it was a draw, was the last fight. So obviously Davison kept his belt. And I've heard it suggested that, Moreno fought above what he's capable of and that Figueiredo didn't fight his best fight. Do you think that's true? Because I felt like it was just a great fight. I didn't really view it as a Figueiredo not playing or fighting at his level or Moreno taking a step up. I felt like both fighters just came out and emptied the tank on each other.
Yeah, that's kind of the question here, and that's what you got to evaluate and what you feel. And I kind of agree with you. I don't think Brandon Moreno fought completely out of his element or just completely above what he's capable of doing. I think he's capable of turning in a very similar performance. I think it was just surprising to everybody because he was the first person to really push Davison Figueiredo to the test, like we saw that. And I think he could do it again. I do lean to the fact because, Davison Figueiredo had to visit the hospital during fight week. He was having some weight cutting issues. And, I do believe that he was sick. I don't believe that was kind of some made up storyline. So I do believe Davison Figueiredo, while I wouldn't say had a bad performance, I do think his health was probably compromised a little bit. So, I was leaning very much towards Figueiredo because I just think he is a very dominant force in the division. Until the weigh-ins yesterday, at which point he came in at the absolute last minute in the 2-minute window. You could see the nervous faces on his camp. Everybody was just like, oh gosh, he looked, I don't want to say weak as he went to the scale, but it didn't look like he was feeling fantastic. He did make the weight on the first attempt, but that concerned me a little bit. I mean, he's been known to have difficult weight cuts throughout his career, and I just wonder when it's gonna be one too many. You know what I mean? When he's gonna dehydrate himself a little too much, it's gonna be weakened. So we'll see. So I came into fight week leaning heavily towards Davison Figueiredo. I think Brandon Moreno can turn in another great performance, but I thought Davison was going to be a cut above. The weight cut scared me a little bit. I'm still leaning towards Davison Figueiredo, but my expectations have come down just a little bit. And again, seeing the reception that Brandon Moreno has had here in Arizona has been unbelievable as well. I think he's going to be, he's going to have an adrenaline shot through the roof tonight.
John, I'm glad you brought that up because, we just saw, recently that, when Rose Namajunas won her belt back, that, Zhang's camp, they tried to make the accusation, oh, she was distracted, she was affected by the crowd. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. But listen, these crowds do have an impact. We've seen numerous fights where these fighters, they just feed off of that adrenaline. They just take their fight game to another level. And I really have to wonder, you mentioned Figueiredo, he's 33 now. Those weight cuts are getting harder and harder as these guys get older. Moreno is a fresh 27. And you could argue that, yeah, Figueiredo's got the belt, but Moreno may have the better resume in terms of how he got here because he has 2 draws over the last few years. So he's been extremely competitive in every fight in the last few years. While Figueiredo, no offense to him, but you could point to his resume and say Yeah, but he fought the one guy twice. So, there's an argument to be made that Moreno, you mentioned the term earlier, he may be a live dog in this fight too.
Yeah, I think he definitely is. It's funny, you touch on the crowd part of it. It seems like such, come on, because the athletes normally say, oh, well, once I get in the cage, all I hear is my coaches. It's just me and the athlete. But man, we've been forced to not have crowds for a year. And I'm telling you, since we've been back with crowds, in April in Jacksonville, in May in Houston, you have absolutely seen a difference. The fights have been unbelievable. And I'm telling you, you can't say it's not because of the crowds, because these fighters have been fighting in empty buildings for a year. They've learned to deal with it. And it wasn't a bad product without crowds. I mean, the UFC found a way to make it work. But man, that extra intensity, that extra focus, that extra, like I said, a shot of adrenaline that you get from the thousands of screaming fans, it's a big deal. And it does become a little bit more challenging at that point to focus on your corner's voice and to hear everything, because these crowds are unbelievable. It's not just people. It's people that have been pent up and waiting for something to do for a year. So they go there and they're just unbelievable with their energy. So, yeah, I think it's absolutely going to be a part of this fight tonight. And I do believe that Moreno is, as I said, a very, very live underdog. I'm still leaning towards Deiveson Figueiredo a little bit, but I do. He's the power that he brings to the table, the submission game that he brings to the table. I think, and truth be told, I think he likes hearing the boos. I think he enjoys kind of being the bad guy. He likes playing that. So, he may receive a little bit of that energy as well. But, Brandon Moreno may be able to do something very special. And he would be the first Mexican-born champion in the UFC. Cain Velasquez, of course, had the Mexican heritage, but he was born in the United States. So that would be a special moment for the country of Mexico as well. And a little bit of history on his side of it as well. So it's an exciting title fight, to say the least.
And the thing, John, is I was over at the PFL MMA on Thursday night, and they had only a few people in there aside from the media. But when Bubba Jenkins was fighting, there were 5 people losing their minds, screaming at him to win that fight. And you could tell it helped him a little bit. And then who walks up to him after the fight and congratulates him? Oh, by the way, it's Ray Lewis. Just happens to be there watching the fight. So, I mean, sometimes these small things, remember during the Apex, people could hear Cormier and Felder saying things on the side. So, these fighters, they probably hear a lot more than we realize sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question about it. They hear these things and they process these things. It affects them in certain ways. And again, I just don't think you can state enough what having a crowd back in the building really does for your focus, your heightened sense of awareness. I mean, you come in there, you get those nerves, you get that extra feel that you haven't had for the past year. I mean, look, anytime you're about to step in a cage with another human being, there's some nerves, there's some energy. But when you hear that, all those thousands, and you see them and you hear them, it's pretty unbelievable. And the fighters that have been able to do it the last 2 pay-per-view events, they've come back and they've told us it. They're like, man, you just don't understand what that does for us as athletes. So I'm looking forward to another special night tonight.
John Morgan over there in Arizona joining us here on the Boardwalk on a hotline here on 97.3 ESPN. UFC 263 tonight. 2 title fights. And, John, it's the people's fight. Nate Diaz is back, and he asked for Leon Edwards. And I understand that he is a heavy underdog in Vegas, but guess what? I think Diaz can win this fight, man. I think that he presents something to Leon that he's never seen before. And I know guys like Gilbert Melendez are friends with him, and they're saying that. But seriously, Leon has fought a lot of guys who are guys who either come straight at him or they're counter punchers. And Nate Diaz, he's a whole different animal. And there's a possibility that Nate Diaz himself rides that crowd noise. I know they changed the rules with the marijuana testing as well. And guess what he's doing? He's walking around, smoking. I've seen the video. So, he's in his element. He's in his own little world right now. And there's a part of me that looks at him and says, that plus 400 over on the line, take that, baby, because Nate Diaz could shock the world tonight.
Listen, he's had a hero's welcome out here. It's been absolutely unbelievable. It's been 1.5 years since he fought, but his star power has not dropped one bit, man. I mean, the reception that he's had out here is amazing. As you said, smoking marijuana at the press conference. I mean, people, it's just, who does that? You know what I mean? Nate Diaz does that. So you're right. Listen, I'm not going to lie to you. This is a tall order for Nate Diaz, man. Leon Edwards is a fantastic fighter. He's a fighter that's been a little bit snake bit in recent years, who should have had an opportunity to fight for a title by now and didn't, because of COVID was a big part of it. And then, of course, he was over in the UK and wasn't able to travel. And then there was some rescheduling with some illnesses. And, I mean, it's unbelievable what this guy's had to go through over the last couple of years. And he wants to come out here and make an absolute statement, and to do it against a superstar like Nate Diaz would be an opportunity for him to do that. He is a fantastic fighter, but Nate Diaz is somebody that can survive anything. You know what I mean? So I think what you're looking for here is, maybe Nate Diaz could get him in a submission early. Nate Diaz, of course, has a fantastic grappling game. I don't think Nate Diaz has the power to outstrike him early or to clip him early or anything like that. So then at that point, now you're thinking late. But that's where this 5-round fight kind of favors Nate Diaz, and that's what makes this so interesting. If it's a 3-round fight, I gotta be honest with you, I'm not all that intrigued by it. But the fact that Nate Diaz could take it into round 4 and round 5, and Leon has shown a tendency to fade at times in his career, and Nate Diaz has shown the ability to come on strong against anybody late in fights. So I think you're looking for something, within the grappling game early, or you're looking for him to survive and pour on the volume late and try to get something going there. So I would say that the Nate Diaz number is fun. To throw a little money on Nate Diaz is going to be a huge fan favorite. Not necessarily the worst option, but be careful what you lay down there because this is a tall order. The number is that big for a reason.
Yeah, we know Nate hasn't fought in a little while as well, but the situation with the 5 rounds you mentioned kind of reminds me. I'm watching the documentary The Kings on Showtime. And they talk about on The Kings about how when Hearns finally got to fight Sugar Ray Leonard the second time, that Hearns was so concerned about the money and that Marvin Hagler was so concerned about the money. But Ray Leonard was like, hey, I want the ring this size. I want to go this number of rounds. And he ended up coming out of those fights all right. He didn't have blemishes on his resume. There's a part of me that looks at Nick Diaz like he wants this to be 5 rounds. He doesn't want this to be 3 rounds. And then, like you said, if that goes 3, 4, and 5th rounds, you have to think Nate's coming out there with the Stockton slap, and he's going to start irritating Edwards, and Edwards might put himself in a bad situation.
Absolutely. And again, we talk about the crowd. Nate Diaz is the biggest superstar as there is in the sport, man. He was so just beloved at the press conference, at the weigh-ins. So, if Leon Edwards starts getting rocked a little bit and the crowd's going crazy. And I always wondered, too, with these big crowds, do they influence judges as well? Because, if Leon Edwards lands a shot, the crowd will be silent. But, if Nate Diaz lands a light jab, the crowd goes nuts. And technically the judge should be able to know what they're looking at. But I just always wonder, they're human beings as well. Do they feel that swell of emotion when there's a flurry of shots that maybe only partially land? So, that could play in Nate's advantage as well. So there are opportunities here for Nate Diaz. And listen, he's a superstar for a reason. That's because when he goes out there, he puts people in absolute brawls. He puts people in wars. And Leon Edwards, his mettle is going to be tested here. I think Edwards, again, I did pick Edwards in my picks over at MMA Junkie. I do think he absolutely has the skills to get this thing done. But if he thinks he can just walk in there and have an easy night at the office and just get rid of this less skilled fighter, that's not going to work out well for him.
Of course, John Morgan, lead MMA reporter over there for MMA Junkie with USA Today, joining us here on 97.3 ESPN. John, before I let you go, there's another fight on this card that I am completely fascinated by. Maia versus Bilal Muhammad. First of all, the last time we saw Bilal, him and Edwards were having a great fight and it ended in an accidental eye poke, and we were so disappointed. But now he's back, and there's not a lot of guys who are like, yeah, I'll go fight Damian Maia. I'll go take on one of the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioners to ever live to fight in MMA. And Damian Maia, I understand that the last time he fought, he lost to Gilbert Burns, but he was on a nice little win streak there before he lost to Burns. And I don't think Maia's completely washed up. And Bilal better be careful because Maia, he ain't the guy that lost to Anderson Silva years ago anymore.
No, Damian Maia, he's getting up there in age for sure, and he's nearing the end of his career, but he's one of the most dangerous specialists in the game. One of the most dangerous Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioners ever to compete in mixed martial arts. And if you make a mistake against him on the ground, you are going to be in trouble. And he has the ability to make you make mistakes. That's how good his jiu-jitsu is he sets you up with little traps and basically can force you to move in a way where you think you're escaping, but you're really just moving right into the next trap that he had set for you. So Bilal Muhammad is going to have to be very, very careful with that, especially early. And that's always the case with grapplers, especially early before a good sweat sets in. Your skin's a little bit drier, so it's harder for you to slip out of submission holds and that sort of thing. But you're right. Bilal Muhammad is a guy who has been thriving to get to the top of the division, who has been grinding, kind of underneath the radar a little bit and wants that respect and wants the opportunity to fight top-level guys and to fight a legend like Damian Maia. As you said, not a lot of people put their hand in the air to do that. Bilal Muhammad is willing to take on the biggest challenges available because he's seeking the biggest reward. So a big one here. And while we're at it, just to round out the main card, Paul Craig and Jamal Hill, these two guys have been having, in hotel altercations all week, and they've had an incredible face-off. So, I think every fight on this pay-per-view main card brings some intrigue to it. I mean, this really is, a fun fight card. I'm not out here trying to sell pay-per-views, but if you're on the fence, I just say, I get it. I think it's going to be a fun night.
Well, what people can do is, even if they don't buy the pay-per-view, they can follow you over at MMA Junkie John and over at MMA Junkie on Twitter. Go check out all the coverage you guys have, because you guys have wall-to-wall coverage. You're down there. And side fact, I started laughing at the presser when Dana White walks up to the stage and says, "All right, where's John Morgan at?" I just started laughing because I was just like, all right, that's where we are in fight week. Dana's just all business at this point.
We've reached that point. That's what we know. That was a fun moment for sure.
John, I always appreciate you jumping on. You guys do a great job covering everything over there. And, of course, this fight, like you said, 263 UFC stacked card tonight on pay-per-view. And as all guest John Morgan appears on the Boardwalk on a hotline. Great stuff, my friend.
Always a pleasure, brother.
Josh Hennig here on Sports Bash Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. I got some UFC picks for you tonight, brought to you by my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Use promo code Hennig when you sign up, and your first bet is risk-free up to $1,000. It's promo code Hennig with FanDuel Sportsbook. Again, must be 21 or to play. Present in New Jersey. Risk-free bet is site credit and must be redeemed in 7 days. Restrictions apply. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. So get you my FanDuel Sportsbook picks on the other side. With more of your thoughts and comments before we get out of here, text board is open. 609-403-0973. To get on the conversation, 609-403-0973. Here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. And, of course, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can get on the conversation as well here on 97.3 ESPN.
The NBA playoffs continue.
Gets the foul and scores. Donovan Mitchell takes it to the rack.
The top-seeded Utah Jazz continue to roll, winning games 1 and 2 against the Clippers. Now the series shifts to Los Angeles. Can Kawhi and the Clippers get the critical Game 3 win, or will the Jazz move within one game of the conference finals? Game 3 of the Clippers and Jazz. Coverage begins today at 8 Eastern.
The NBA playoffs, exclusively on 97.3 ESPN FM, South Jersey's sports leader.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes prior sales. See dealer for details. As you know, most car dealers in our area are still having trouble getting cars and charging a lot more for them. But Bennett Chevy isn't like most dealers. We kept what you love, our famous GM supplier employee prices. It's incredible. You pay what our supplier employees pay and not 1 penny more. And Bennett also gives you all the rebates. That's up to 25% off MSRP. 25% off. Plus, we've still got available 0% financing to save you even more. Shopping for pre-owned? Well, Bennett's still paying a minimum $7,000 for trades. So if any old junker's worth at least $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock, think of how much your good trade is worth. And Bennett's now an authorized lease return center for all brands. And with our non-commissioned sales staff paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, there's no pressure, no hassles. The best prices, low rates, the most for trades. Nobody beats Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
PropSwap is the #1 app to buy and sell sports bets. Derek from Galloway made $800 cash just from buying and selling sports bets on PropSwap. Basketball, baseball, hockey. Just buy a future bet, hold it for a few weeks, then sell it for big profit. And if you're a buyer looking for better odds than what a sports book can offer, there's never been a better time to join PropSwap. As new users right now, get a free $100 match bonus. But hurry, the offer expires soon. Check out PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today.
This is Sports Bash Saturday with Josh Hennig, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios. Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We're going to finish out the show talking about, well, your thoughts and comments. Give you my picks for UFC 263, brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook and more, right here on 97.3 ESPN. Before we get to your guys' thoughts and comments, I do want to say, somebody texted in about saying that the MMA guy who won was John's great. For those who don't know, John has been covering the MMA scene for over a decade. And, I mentioned him about what Dana White said. John's the guy that if you ever watch those pre and post fight pressers, he almost always gets the first questions in, and they let him ask multiple questions because John has built up a reputation as being one of the most fair and balanced guys who covers MMA on the planet. And I think a part of it's because of the fact that he doesn't have bias. He doesn't walk in there with favorites. And I think that's a big deal. And I think that it's a great example for a lot of people who wonder why certain people have certain jobs or why certain people get certain opportunities. And part of it is because you build that trust. You build that reputation, and he's got one of those reputations. So I always love having him on. He does a great job. He's a great dude. He's a great person, and he does a great job. 609-403-0973 is the text board. We'd also get your thoughts and comments as all of you watching on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Before we get to YouTube and Twitter, we got a comment over on the text board. Now, Cole from LBI, I'm just letting you know that your text was really long. So I had to edit it for the YouTube stream. I'm going to read it in full from the text board, but it's up on the YouTube stream if you guys are watching, so you can at least follow along. Cole says, Gil was talking about PFL a lot this week, Pro Football Focus. Did you see them rank the Eagles offensive line 18? That's really low if they are healthy. I just don't see the Eagles having a great defense, and I don't trust Hurts. Cole goes on to say from LBI, he says, if Dallas is the top 15 defense, they'll be Super Bowl contenders. The offense is really good. I think Washington is decent, but I don't know if Fitzpatrick can lead them to be the best team in the division. And if the Giants can somehow get Aaron Rodgers, they would automatically be Super Bowl contenders with the weapons they have. Well, they're not getting Aaron Rodgers. Remember, Dave Gettleman loves Daniel Jones. So, listen, you make some valid points, Cole. I think the defense can be a little bit better than you're giving him credit for. I don't think it'll be a great defense. I think it'll be a good defense. I think the addition of Kerrigan and the new defensive coordinator is going to make a big difference. They just need to add one more corner on the outside. I think they'll get that guy for training camp. It seems like Steven Nelson, from everything I've heard and read, is basically trying to start a bidding war out there. So that's why he hasn't been signed yet. I think he'll have to settle for a team because he's not going to get the money that he thought he was going to at free agency. On top of that, I think the Eagles' offensive line, like you said, is better than 18th in the NFL. Here's the problem with Pro Football Focus. Pro Football Focus is one of those deals where they're all analytics. They don't trust the film. They don't watch the games as intently as someone like me does. So I take all of their rankings with a grain of salt. It's fun fodder. It's fun debate. But I would recommend anybody out there, don't take Pro Football Focus too seriously. Just saying. I think the Eagles, if healthy, are a top 10 offensive line. I think the defense, if it plays up to his caliber, is probably 16th, 15th in the NFL. If they fix the secondary, if they don't fix the secondary, they're probably 18th. Just because they were third in the NFL last year in blitzing, and that was when they didn't even blitz. They were third in sacks, They were third in quarterback pressures. They were really good. Rodney overall watching on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, he says, exciting fight card tonight, Josh. I usually don't care much for the flyweight division, but Brandon Moreno is such a dog. I will watch any of his fights. 5 rounds of Figueiredo's superhuman conditioning again. Here's the problem. I think John Morgan brought a great point. Figueiredo had a horrible weight cut. And as you get older, those weight cuts get worse and worse. And I'm looking at Figueiredo. I'm wondering, did that weight cut take something out of him? Because we've seen in the past guys who have bad weight cuts, it catches up with them. There's a point in time where they have so many bad weight cuts that they get in there and they just don't have it anymore. And I'm looking at Figueiredo and I'm wondering, is that what happens to him? There was a fighter years ago named Miguel Torres. And Torres was a dominant fighter at 135. But he started having some rough weight cuts. And then when Dominic Cruz came along and just started manhandling him, and he was never the same fighter because he couldn't cut down the 135 anymore as well. And he tried to move with the 145, wasn't the same because he wasn't the bigger fighter anymore. He couldn't use that jab. He couldn't use the distance anymore. So in MMA, there's a long history of guys who too many weight cuts catch up to them. And I'm wondering, is tonight the night that the weight cuts catch up to Figueiredo? So that's one of the things that I'm definitely watching for in tonight's fight. Now, I promise you guys, each and every week, I give you my picks for UFC fights brought to you by my friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Again, the promo code is Hennig. Your first bet risk-free up to $1,000 after deposit. For new users, only use promo code Hennig. Also, if you are a new user, you bet $5, you win $150 as long as you sign up with my promo code Hennig. Place your bet on either Adesanya or Vettori to fight, maximum of $5. And if your bet wins, you can win $150. So if you think Adesanya and Vettori is going to win tonight, new users, promo code Hennig, you get that. If you're an existing user, don't forget about they have the same game parlay insurance for the NBA playoffs, all playoffs long, same game parlay. Any game, get the $10 back if you're an existing user on FanDuel Sportsbook. All right, as I promised, I always love to get you guys some picks here. First of all, I kind of gave it away earlier. I'm going Nate Diaz. I don't care that he's a 4-10 underdog. There's just something about his style of fighting that I think is going to be a problem for Leon Edwards. Because you look at all of Leon Edwards' opponents. Listen, Leon's a super amazing fighter. The dude hasn't lost a fight since 2015. And that was to the current champion, Kamaru Usman. He's been on an amazing winning streak. But look at that winning streak very closely. Unanimous decision, split decision, unanimous decision. Another unanimous decision, another unanimous decision. That's 5 of the previous 6 fights for Bilal Muhammad were all unanimous decisions. Only one was a finish over Peter Sabota. So I'm kind of wondering, he's used to going and grinding out these wins against these guys. You can't grind on Nate Diaz. He is a grinder. So I'm picking Nate Diaz to win this fight. I know he's a plus 410 right now on FanDuel Sportsbook, but I'm going with it. I'm running with it. I'm also liking the dog in the Figueiredo-Moreno fight. I think Moreno can ride that crowd, plus 168 in that fight. And then for Adesanya versus Vettori, John Morgan brought up a great point that he's a bit of a hothead, is Vettori. And I'm looking at that and wondering, does this fight go the distance? I don't think it does. I really don't. I think Adesanya wins, but I don't think it goes the distance. The only way Vettori wins if he can grind out Adesanya and get this fight into like the second, third, and fourth rounds. I like Vettori a lot as a fighter, but I don't know if he could beat Adesanya right here, right now. Josh Hennig here. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend. I'll catch you Monday.
Coming up on the next edition of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Hey, it's Mike Gill, and coming up on Monday, we're recapping the Hawks and Sixers Game 3 and getting you ready for Game 4. Mike McGarry from the Press of Atlantic City. Paul Hudrick inside the Sixers at 3:20. Plus, football at 4 with Jeff Mosher. Do you remember? And the Phillies-Yankees weekend. Bob Wankel joins me.
The Sports Bash, weekdays from 2 to 6 on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.